And I just turned around and I hauled ass out of there. I was done. I wasn't dealing with that.
The hypocrisy of the cult is one of the things that turned me away the quickest.
When I turned my headlights on, it turned and looked at us. And one of the things I remember the most were the eyes were glowing red.
I see an orb of light. It is just circling these steps like it is waiting for me.
And he begins to tell them that he saw a UFO. They're basically like, what are you talking about? That's 7 foot up on a tree, peeking around it, and that's where I saw the top of the muzzle, nose, and the eyes. As soon as I made eye contact with this thing, it felt like death.
I'd like to take this time to welcome my guest tonight, Joey. Thanks for coming on here and talking with me.
Thank you, Brandon. I appreciate you taking the time to hear me out and listen to what I have to say. And one of the reasons I'm reaching out to you is because of a previous episode you had. That's what brought me forth, because I don't always necessarily like to talk about I the little things that would people tell me that I'm crazy about or anything like that. A little bit of background about me. I've only done 2 jobs. I've done the military and I've done electrical work. That's what I currently do. I'm an electrician. I'm just a normal human being. I get up early. I go to work. I do my 40 hours a week, and I'm just trying to be the best dad that I can for my little girl and her mom. And I'm just a normal human being that just, for whatever reason, has had certain sightings of certain things. And how would I put it? I would experience things that apparently most people don't experience, which to me was normal, and I didn't realize it wasn't normal until I realized nobody else did. That's who I am, and that's where I'm coming from.
Now, when you reached out to me, you had listened to a recent episode where a lady had encountered what she thought was a dog man out behind her apartment. And you guys have spoken since then and everything. Is this something that you've also experienced, or how you made that connection just because of her general area, or how did that work out with you?
Well, um, I don't live in her general area. Where I live is actually a little bit further away.
Okay.
But I come up to my sister's house because my sister takes care of my mom who's got dementia. So I come up here several times a week. And where my sister lives is truthfully not very far away from where she had the sighting. And I've looked on and I've seen corridors for some of the streams and rivers that run through. So I literally, as the crow flies, I'm maybe 20 miles away from where she had these experiences where I saw this thing cross the street. And the way that she described the tail just struck a chord with me. And that's when I reached out to you to try to get in contact with her. And, you know, for me, it's only been a few months since this sighting. So that was honestly what started the whole thing with me. And after the conversation I had with her, uh, I mean, there's a lot of details that I can go into with that. But if you're okay with it, then I'd like to start at the very beginning where everything started for me and
Yeah,
why I
absolutely.
think these things are actually out there.
Yeah, I will turn it over to you and you can start from the beginning, and try not to interrupt you unless I have something that really sticks out to me.
Well, the way it started out for me was when I was a little kid, I I, I live in Maryland. I grew up in Montgomery County, and you look at it now, it is hardly what anybody would call a rural county or in the middle of the woods or anything. But in the '80s, just me, a little kid, I used to go off into the woods with my little pellet gun, and I know people are gonna get mad at me, but to shoot stuff and targets and stuff. So I was just a silly little kid. I was probably 12 years old. It was in the mid '80s, and one of the things I really enjoyed, especially in the summer, when we were off break, I grew up poor, so we weren't going on vacations or anything. We were just off school, so I would go to the creek and I would look for turtles, snakes, and water snakes and stuff like that. That was my fun. That's how I grew up, and I'm thankful for that actually. But on this one particular day, I I was wading through the creek going upstream, and I heard um, a noise behind me that sounded to me like a squirrel running up a tree where they dig into the bark. So I stopped and I turned around, and I'm trying to focus on where I heard the noise. And what I saw was what I call a little white monkey. People have corrected me on that before and said it's an ape, but I still call it. What I saw was a little white monkey. It looked like a little chimp to me, and it was coming down a tree, but it was coming down head first. Like I said, people have corrected me on whether it was a monkey or an ape or how a chimp comes down a tree. I was 12 years old, dude. I'm just telling you what I saw.
Right.
I saw this little thing coming down a tree head first. So when I stopped, it stood out. It stood out because it was white, and we just locked eyes. It, we just looked at each other. We looked at each other maybe for 5, 6 seconds. But that's what I saw. It was a little tiny chimp, and he was maybe 2 feet or so. I'm sure if he was standing, he was probably like only 3 feet tall. And I'm about 12, 13 years old myself. So it's just two little kids basically running into each other in the middle of the woods. And I see this little thing, and it's looking at me. And eventually it just kind of goes around the tree, just like a squirrel would, just goes to the other side of the tree. So I start walking towards the tree, get out of the creek, and walk around the whole tree. I see absolutely nothing. I didn't feel anything. I didn't hear anything. The noise in the woods, it didn't go quiet. Nothing. Nothing else happened. But this is what I saw. It was a little chimp, and it was not an albino. Didn't have the pale skin or the red eyes or anything. Um, I done the best that I can to recollect this so I can speak a little bit more about it. I want to say that it had gray skin. Don't hold me to it, but I want to say it had gray skin. And that's what I saw. I saw it. I eventually went home. I talked to my brother about it, and he said, "Dude, you probably just saw a squirrel." There are there are albino white squirrels, but I have never seen a squirrel that big, and I have certainly never seen a squirrel that looks like a chimp. So I don't know what I saw that day. As a little kid, I just put it in the back of my head and I left it there for the longest time until I got into my late 30s and early 40s and started looking at this whole Bigfoot thing. And I'm not saying that what I saw was a Bigfoot. I'm simply saying this is what I saw when I was a little kid. I don't know what it was. I don't know where it came from, or I can't put anything paranormal to it. That's simply what I saw.
Do you know if it had fur or hair? Could you tell if it did or if it was just colored that way?
At that time, I honestly, I don't think I would have known the difference, but it, to me, it looked no different than what a chimp looks like a little baby chimp. So I don't know what they consider that, if it's fur or hair, but it was literally the same way, and that's why I call it a chimp,
Right.
because uh again, I don't know what considered chimps. It's if it's hair or fur, but it was the same thing. It was flat against its body. It was thick. It was covered, and that is the best of my recollection of it. Again, like I said, this was in the mid '80s.
Right. I'm thinking like if it didn't have hair, if it was like its actual flesh itself, that sounds very similar to what people have reported seeing when it comes to like these little crawler looking things, like the pill crawlers are like a white gray color. And
No, no, it definitely had hair. I
okay.
just don't know if it was hair or fur. Is what I guess what I'm trying to say is
Yeah, I know what
it
you
had
mean.
hair on it. It wasn't like naked skin. It it's best it sounds silly to say, but it was definitely
This,
okay. I won't call it a monkey. It was definitely an ape
it was
of
definitely a
some sort.
primate of some kind.
Yes, yes, exactly. I just don't know whether I can call it hair or fur because
I think primates and like with apes, monkeys, I think it's all hair. I don't think they have fur. I think fur is more like a mammal. Obviously, a primate's a mammal, but I think it's more like different type of animals. I'm pretty sure primates are all hair.
yeah, but it definitely has like if you look at a chimp, like their hair, I guess, just goes back like leans back. It's not it doesn't like stick up or it's not like fluffy. Maybe like sometimes with a dog, it leans back, and that's what I saw. They it had hair on it, and the hair was what was white. The skin itself was not. It wasn't like a weird, unnatural thing. It, for all I know, it could have been an escaped primate of some sort.
It could have been something that they had somewhere. Obviously, you said it was in the 70s, so who knows what type of regulations was going on back then, but it could have been someone's pet that escaped or they let loose.
Now, especially back in the '80s, Maryland does get very cold. I mean, like here recently, the temperature's been 11 degrees. I mean, that's not like super cold like up in the north or some of
Mm,
those states like that, but that's still a pretty harsh winter to survive. And if you're that small, I would I could only assume that you're still an infant. I personally I don't see any primates because they're mostly warm weather animals. I don't see how a little animal like that could survive, first of all, on its own or through an actual winter. And personally, I've never seen a white chimp. I
Hey, I don't
like
know about a white chimp, and like I'm sure they've had like some albinos, but that's not anything very common. And the randomness of you guys running across it in the middle of an area where there shouldn't be chips in the first place makes it even more strange.
right, and like I said, when I walked up to the tree and I walked around the whole tree, I didn't see it. I don't know. I'm not going to tell you anything else again other than what I saw or what I experienced. I didn't see a hole that could have gone into or anything else. I simply went around the tree and it wasn't there anymore. and you can make of that whatever you want to make of it. But that was simply my experience. Now, moving forward, once I actually heard about Bigfoot, because at that time I didn't know what Bigfoot was or anything else. Um, I did get fascinated by it when I was a little kid. You know, I started reading books about it in the library. You remember those things where people like used to put books in it with little cards and stuff
Right. Yeah.
way back then. And so I started reading books on it and everything, and I was probably like 16, 17 by then, and piqued my interest. But I always thought this is like one animal, maybe two, that lives somewhere in the Northwest or California, right? That's where I left it on the West Coast. Definitely not over here in Maryland. I mean, what's Maryland? And as I got older, I got more into it in my, like I said, in my late 30s, early 40s. And I got bold enough, and this was in 2021. I was living in a property in Frederick for a little bit that I started call blasting the Sierra sounds. Can't tell you anything ever answered me. Nothing happened, and eventually I'm like, okay, well, you know, it's been several weeks I've been doing this, so I'm just gonna drop it and leave it alone. And then one day I leave very early for work. Um, like I said, I do electrical work most of the time. My jobs start around 5 o'clock, so I got to leave at least by 3:30. Um, and having dogs, I get up. I got to take care of them, and so usually my alarm goes off at 2:45 in the morning when I get up. And I have my system with the dogs, everything else. And the one thing I want to point out is the dogs I own are German blood working German shepherds. They are trained in protection. They are trained basically for when I'm not at home to make sure that my kid's okay. That's why I have those dogs. They've gotten into fights with coyotes before. The male has definitely handled himself. Uh, they chased a couple of bears off. Well, not a couple. Chased a bear off before. So these dogs are not afraid of the animals around. And this one day I walk out with them and I'm expecting them to go to the back and do their thing like normal, and they won't come off the porch. So I'm like, okay, dude, let's go. Like, you know, they had doggy doors, but I'm like, come on, let's go, because it was just a matter of how I socialized with them, but they wouldn't come off the porch. And a few seconds later, there was a creek that ran about 400 meters behind that property, and down at that creek and a little bit to the left of the back of the house, the home, I hear to me what sounds like two chimps arguing. Um, I won't make the noise because obviously I can't recreate it. But if you can think of two chimps, the way they sound, you know how they have like that high pitch kind of like, "Ooh, ooh,"
Yeah.
and, um, I heard an interaction, and it was only maybe 5, 10 seconds of it, but you could clearly tell there were two individuals that had that interaction, and my dogs were already looking in that direction. I I cannot tell you what happened out there or what was out there. All I can tell you is my dogs refused to come off the porch, and they were all already standing there looking in that direction. And when I heard that, I uh, I just brought everybody back in and I said, okay, we're done for today. I got to go to work. Let's go. Um, Again, I do not believe that, as far as I know, that the state of Maryland has a viable chimp population. I don't know of any great apes that are in the state of Maryland. I don't know of a monkey that's in the state of Maryland that's native. So I'm just telling you what I heard. And about a week or two later after that, mind you, like I said, I've been blasting the Sierra sounds. Um, I get woken up one night, and it was right around midnight, maybe a little bit past midnight, by this sound, and it wakes me up. And basically, what I hear is like somebody beating on a tree. It's um, it's like somebody taking a wooden baseball bat to a tree, and I can hear it. It goes. It would do it 3 times. It would just go bam, 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 and it was so loud. That's how it woke me up. Again, I go back to my dogs. They're trained. If you come up to the house in the middle of the night, they're not necessarily going to bark because they're trained, but this is what you're going to get. And I look at my dogs because all my dogs sleep with me. They got little beds around the bed and everything. And even the biggest male I have was like slammed down into the bed in the middle of his paws with his head, and his ears were just back. Like they looked like they were trying to bury themselves into their beds. And that's not the dogs I have. If you came to my front door and started kicking the door in with a shotgun, those dogs would be the first ones down there. But all it took was for this sound coming from the wood line, which was maybe about 100 feet away from the house, is where the wood line started. And I had gone back there. I'd seen dead deer, and that's where the coyotes did their thing and everything. So I know that there's wilderness out there. I get it. But that night there was something out there. I will assume beating on a tree. And after I've talked to a couple of people after this, it kind of makes a little bit more sense to me anyway. There would be 3 knocks done really hard that sounded like solid wood knocks, like on a tree, wood on wood. But then the pitch of the other sound was different and so much faster. And somebody played the sounds of a gorilla beating its chest. I don't know if you've ever heard that or not, but they like beat on their chest, showing dominance really hard and really fast.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually sounded really familiar to what I heard that night. And again, I'm not gonna tell you that I know what was out there. I'm simply gonna tell you that what I heard was 3 massive knocks, like somebody was beating on a tree, and then after 3 knocks, it would stop and just the sound would change and would go so fast, like "Bah, bah, 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 bah," but it sounded a little bit more hollowed. And I do think that person. I. 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 I'm afraid to say it in that sense, but truthfully, it makes sense. It sounded like something would hit and then just beat on its chest. So what I did was I reached for my phone on the nightstand and I'm looking for the camera app so I can record what I'm hearing. And as soon as I pick up the phone, it stops. Immediately stops. And I'm just sitting there. I mean, it's almost midnight. It's pitch black. Well, not obviously not in the room, but it's so I'm looking around at the dogs, everything else, and I know this sounds weird, but all of a sudden I just get this feeling, like this unnatural feeling of fear. Mind you, I'm doing nothing but sitting in my bed. I have all the dogs around me. I have a tool that can help me on the nightstand, and my hair just stands up. I just got this unnatural fear. My hair stands up, and I don't know what I'm dealing with anymore. And all it took was for me to pick up the phone to record this. Now, once I close the app, I hear it again, but in a matter of seconds, it's so much further away. Again, I'm gonna tell you what that was because I never saw anything out there. That is simply my experience. People tell me that it was a Sasquatch. I don't know because I've never experienced one. I've never seen one hitting a tree to begin with. I've never seen one beating on its chest. I don't even know how the heck something in the wood line would know when I pick up my phone.
Yeah.
How so
That's the weird thing I was thinking about. I was like, how would it know what you're doing if it's not able to see you directly?
right, and that's why I tell you, Brandon. I told you I was just gonna tell you what I've experienced. I'm not
Hmm.
gonna tell you what it is because I don't know what it is. People tell me that it's one thing or another. Maybe. I'm just telling you what I've experienced. Do I think these things are natural? Yeah, but that's a whole nother conversation, I'm sure. I lean more towards what Scott Carpenter thinks. The Lord rest in peace with him. But I that's where I come from. I've had these experiences. That's what what I experienced with these things. Um, I used to hunt a lot. I used to go fishing a lot, and I don't live too far away from what they call the Potomac River, and it's a decent sized river. I used to go down there all the time and go fishing, but I used to always try to go down there before people got there. Just like dusk starting to break, so it's not like when I was hunting when you go in when it's dark. It was just still dark, but lights come soon, and it's a fairly decent sized trail. I was going up the trail, and I start hearing these owls. I had one on the left and I had one on the right, and they're talking back and forth to each other. And my hair didn't go up, but it just felt really unnatural because I've seen owls out there plenty of times when I get there. I've seen owls. They hunt there. They do everything. I mean, we're fortunate we have an area with a lot of predatory birds, falcons, hawks, some eagles and stuff. So owls definitely. great horned owls, beautiful animals out there. I've never had one follow me, and that's exactly what these things were doing. Like, I walked maybe a quarter of a mile, and they stayed next to me, hooting back and forth. Uh, I did get uncomfortable enough that I just turned around and went back to my car because I was the only one out there, and th- that was the first time I've ever been followed by an owl. I or owls, I guess, because like I said, there was one on the left of the path, there was one on the right of the path, and um, again, can I tell you what that was? All I can tell you was two owls hooting. I have absolutely no idea what was out there. I didn't hear anything walking through the woods. I didn't see any shapes through the woods. I just heard the noises following me. Um, my brother-in-law, not too far up from where my sister lives, he he also does a lot of hunting. He was on a deer stand overlooking a field, and some started breaking branches behind him. And eventually, he said it started to growl at him, and eventually roared at him. And when it roared at him, he came off that deer stand, walked out into the field, called my sister, and asked her to come pick him up. He got on the GPS. He walked towards the nearest road because if he went back to his truck, he would have had to go back into the woods and back into wherever this thing was. He's had more experiences, but he refuses to talk about it. But I only know that story because of my sister, and she told me like that dude was scared, and then he's a pretty rough dude too. He's also ex-military. He's a pretty rough guy, and for something to drive him out of his uh, tree stand like that, and he's got a rifle. I think he had a 30-06. That mm, that that's got to say something. Again, I can't tell you. I cannot tell you that this is a Sasquatch plan. I've yet to see a 10-foot monkey in the woods. Okay, I've never seen that. I'm just relating my experiences.
I think there are a lot of similarities between what people experience and how they react to it, just because I know of other people that have had experiences similar, and they're not the type of person you would think would get scared of something. And then all of a sudden, something happens and they leave the woods. I was talking to someone recently, not recorded or anything like that, just in general, and they're out coyote hunting all the time. And they mentioned that there was just something about where they were that felt off. And the surrounding area got really quiet. And they just couldn't shake that fear. They've never been overcome by fear before. And they left and they haven't been back out there because, at least not since I spoke with them about it, because they said there's just something strange. They didn't see anything, they didn't hear anything, but just something felt off. And if they hunt all the time, it's just weird that something like that would set someone off to where they got so afraid that they wanted to leave and not even hunt anymore in that area.
Right, and just to give you a point of reference, I'll even give you this example. Before this must have been 2000, early 2007. Friend of mine, we were pig hunting in Georgia, bow hunting, and long story short, we ended up tracking a bear accidentally, and when we cornered him, this bear charges out of the woods, the shrubs that he was in. I uh I was bow hunting, but I still carried a arm with me. I pulled it. I didn't shoot him, But that bear, as soon as he tore out of the woods, I mean, he scared you know what out of us. Uh, we're just human beings. It startled us, right? And even though it's just a black bear, because we were in Georgia, it's just a black bear, but that's not an animal you want to go toe to toe with. So I immediately drew on it, but he thankfully he just ran back down the hill. You know, we laughed about it later and everything, but my hair never stood up. You know, it wasn't like, yeah, he startled us. No, well, no, let's just say he scared us. He did scare us. Two military guys with bows and handguns, and he scared us. Just a little old black bear. My hair never stood up. I That would never put me in a position where I would say, I'm never going back into the woods hunting again. It was just a bear. The things that I've experienced, I feel very uncomfortable in the woods now. I and I don't even know how to explain it or how to say that to people. I no longer feel comfortable in the woods, you know, and that brings me to the point of how you and I got started on the email is with the person you had on and what I saw, and this was only a few months ago, and it took several months for me just to process it. But what happened is within my line of work, sometimes I do, mostly I do day shifts. Sometimes every once in a while I have to do a night shift for whatever, depending what building we're working at or who we're working for. We got to do an outage, and obviously it's causes less of a disturbance if it's at night. So we do some late work sometimes. And I was leaving. It was about 3 p.m. You know, the sun was out, everything else. So I go down. I get to the stop sign. I got to go right, but obviously I'm going to look both ways. And when I look to my left, I caught movement, and I see this black thing going across the road, and I immediately think bear because I've seen bears before. So I'm thinking bear. Um, but obviously, as I look at it, I see it. By the time my mind actually focuses on it and really takes it all in, I didn't see the head. I saw from the shoulders back, and it had a long tail where near the body, the hair was really short. And as it went away from the body, the hair got longer, longer, and longer, and it got really bushy. And that's why I identified with previous person that you had on your podcast. So I tend to kind of like you. I rather debunk something before I can say this is what it is. Because even with all the stuff that I told you right now, I all I can tell you is I don't know what it is. This is just my experience. So the same thing with this thing. I look at this thing. I've seen bears run across the road. I've seen a bear that almost charged me and runs down the hill. I I've been in these situations before. Um, I do have a military record. I do have the ability to put two and two together, so to speak. But this thing, I couldn't get it out of my head. And I kept going back to it and going back to it and going back to it. One of the other things, maybe I should have said this earlier, but one of the other things I do is I work with a lot of rescues, mostly with German Shepherds, but I work with Rottweilers, I work with Great Danes, I work with Great Pyrenees, I work with a lot of large breed dogs. My current dogs, I take him out the field. I just let the dog run and get it all out of his system and everything else. I know what a dog looks like at 100, 200 meters. I know what they look like at that distance. and this just wouldn't leave me alone because of what I had seen crossing the road. So what I did is I literally went home and I measured my dog, and he is 24 inches at the shoulder, and without the head from the shoulder to the back, not the tail, just from the shoulder to the back, he's 30 inches. The head with the neck, it's a little bit more. Just the head alone is like 14 inches because he's German working lines, but so he's got a big head, but 30 inches. 30 inches, right? That's like what? What and a, 2 feet and a half.
Yeah, 2.5
Uh,
feet.
I measured the road. The road is 20 feet. So each lane technically has 10 feet, right? This animal that I saw, because of it was going crossing where a part where there's like a turn, and maybe I should say this also, right in that area, there's a little wood thicket where a lot of deer come across too. So there's like a deer trail that goes through there. Now I don't know the area there well enough to speculate where all the woods go up. They're saying there's an actual deer trail because my sister and I almost hit a deer there one time before. So I know they go through there. I've seen them there before. It's a little piece of woodland that goes in between all the houses. But at that distance, knowing how small my dog looks at that distance, that animal dwarfed my dog. Like I said, I've been around Great Danes. I've even seen an Irish hound, the wolfhounds. Pretty big, tall dogs. I've never seen a dog that's 2 to 3 times the size of my dog, though. And this dog, when it was crossing the road, was taking up almost half the lane. And that's without the head, like from shoulder to rear. Like I said, not counting tail or anything. Shoulder to rear, the thing was taking almost half the road. So if the road, if one lane is 10 feet wide, this animal was taking 6, 7, 8 feet of it.
The average road width is about 11 feet. What, like from, it's 22 feet, so the lane width would be about 11 feet roughly. So you're looking at, like you said, 6 to 8 feet of body.
Correct. Not that's not including because the dogs have a longer neck and then the
Mm-hmm.
head. I'm saying literally like from the shoulder, from the where the front paws are to its rear without the tail. This animal is taking almost half the road.
That's almost the size of just thinking in my brain right now. Like that's almost like horse size when it comes to like length. That's huge for a dog.
Correct. For a canine, because I've even had people, well, maybe you saw a wolf. It's like I'm pretty sure, I'm 99.9% sure that we do not have wolves in Maryland. And especially if we did, maybe red wolves that have come up from South Carolina or something like that. But
I,
the
s-
timbered Nordic wolves, even they don't get that big.
I was gonna say I don't even think wolves get that large.
No, they even a 200-pound wolf, maybe 5 feet long and 3 feet at the shoulder or something. But uh, to take up that much road space is the reason why I reached out to to the person you interviewed because it's not too far from where she had her encounter. Now, I'm not going to tell you that I saw, I've heard you several times on not just on your podcast, but I've heard your story several times, and it's very fascinating, by the way. I didn't see a canine on its rear legs. I'm not going to come here and lie to you. I didn't see a canine on its rear legs. I didn't see, one of these huge things turn and I saw a roadside crossing of what could only describe as a very, very large canine animal. And because, like I said, because of the training I have had, is why I couldn't let it go. And where it really caught my attention, that's when I went to measuring my dog. I went to measure the road, and it just, to this day, it doesn't add up in my head. It still doesn't add up to my head that you can't be that big and be a dog. And that's why I tell you is I'm not going to tell you what I saw as far as what I think it is. I'm only telling you what I actually saw.
Right.
And that's what I saw.
I have no idea of any sort of canine that would be that large. Even a wolf, I'm pretty sure, does not get that large. Even if it was a northern wolf, I still don't think they get that large. And the largest ones that I'm looking on my phone right now would have been like a dire wolf that is no longer around here. It's extinct, supposed to be. So I don't have an explanation for that. Some people like to tell me I saw a bear. Well, with what you saw, wouldn't have had a big old tail if it was a bear.
No, and that's the thing is I saw the tail, and even like I said, I've seen the bears around here. Like if you go to Western Maryland, you might get a 500-pound bear. But the rest of the state, we don't get bears that big. We just don't. We're not that far north where these animals get that big. We do have them. They even where I live in Frederick, they come through the neighborhood sometimes, and the neighbors will send out alerts from their ring cameras and stuff. So, but maybe 300 pounds, and a 300 pound bear is it's not. I hate to say it, but it's not even that much bigger than my dog. Obviously, they're thicker and have more muscle. They might be maybe a foot longer, but they don't take up half the freaking road when they're crossing it.
How,
It
I was just thinking, not to interrupt, but like, how tall do you think it was from the ground to its top of its back?
a very conservative estimate. I would say it was at least twice the height of my dog, but I probably would say a little bit more. So at least 4 to 5 feet to the shoulder.
Yeah, there's no way it's a wolf or a dog. There's just nothing that tall, that large. So if it was a canine, then it's one of the biggest canines that I've heard about. Now, I did speak to a lady a few years ago that said she saw something when it was walking on all fours. It was taller than the front of her hood of her truck. So that sounds very in line to about the height of what you're describing. And I'm not sure, I can't remember offhand what state that she was from, but I don't know. Like when it comes to things like this, I don't have I wish I had an answer. That's why I do what I do, because I want to know what everyone's seen. I want to know what I saw. I want to know what you saw. I want to know what everyone out there experiences. But it's hard to wrap your head around things that make no sense.
Exactly, and and that's why I told you and I tell people it's like I'm not telling you, this is this or this is that. I'm simply telling you, this is what I saw. I don't know what it is. I can't tell you what it is because mm, like the person I spoke to, it wasn't standing on its hind legs growling at. Okay, it wasn't facing me like a man. I saw a really huge animal that should not be that big, according to canine standards, cross a road. That's it. That's all I saw. And because of my training, I was able to go back, measure everything, and realize that this okay, this isn't normal. This it should not be this big. And when I see a bear cross the road, I just think to myself, wow, that's really cool. It's a cool experience. That was awesome. Got to see a bear today. This thing has just lingered in my head and I can't let it go.
I know the feeling. Do you have you been back down that way, or did when you went back and measured it? Did you actually look for any sort of prints or anything? Any tracks?
I did. There's nothing there. And like I said, I mean it's like a small slivet between houses. It's like how is it here? Or why would it be here? Or why would an animal like that be here? It's literally in between houses.
Yeah, that
The wooded area might be 60, 70 feet wide. The little path as far as like the actual wooded area. There's like a little tiny pond right there. But other than that, it
it doesn't make a whole lot of sense of why something that large would be in such a neighborhooded area,
correct.
or where it would go afterwards, where it came from, where it would go.
Exactly. I and that's you know what? Maybe somebody bred some hybrid and it got loose. It was just some wolf hybrid of some sort. Maybe that's all I saw. All I'm saying, I saw an immensely large canine cross the road, and I'll leave it at that. I People can make what they want of it. I'm not gonna tell you what it was because I don't know what it was. All I know is I can go back to the facts, to the information I have, the measurements I took, and tell you that that animal was extremely large for a canine.
You mentioned a hybrid, and it got me thinking. I've seen someone that has bred those before. They've bred a wolf with, I can't think of the breed, but the dog itself almost looked like a very large collie. Like the color of it, its hair and everything was like a large collie. But even still, it wasn't nearly as large as what you're describing.
No, even wolves, even large wolves that I've heard about, like I said, I've never heard of a wolf. Couple 100 pounds to even 250-pound wolf I've heard of. That's about 5 feet long. But they include the whole everything, the head and everything. What I saw was only from the shoulder to the rear. I I never saw the head on it. So I don't know what the head looked like. I don't know if it had a mane or not. I literally saw it from the shoulder to the rear, and that's it. But that alone was taking up almost half the road.
According to what I'm seeing online, and don't always believe everything you see online, but it says the northwestern wolf is one of the largest subspecies, and the males can get up to 7 feet long and weigh over 160 pounds. But it says the height of them to the shoulder is about 33 inches. So that's still less than 3 feet.
Yeah, 3 inches short of three. And
Yeah.
this thing was easily at least, again, this is just an estimate, just because I work with dogs for so long. I measured my dog. I know what he looks like at that distance. That thing was easily at least twice or more the height of my dog. And I have a big dog. I mean, it doesn't sound, 24 inches. It doesn't sound big, but when he, with his neck and his head goes up, and he's a big dog. He's 100 pounds. That's a big dog. He's trained in protection. When he hits, you feel every bit of it. That's a big dog. And that goes back to, the other experiences I told you I had. How does a dog that's trained to do that cower when it's already been in fight with coyotes, killed the coyote, and done all this other, chased the bear off? How does something in a tree line just knocking at a tree? Why does it make it cower and my hair stand up?
Yeah. Those are the questions that I honestly, and I know this is not what most people want to hear, but I think those are the things that are going to haunt you for a while, because it's the same things that haunt me. I'm going on 20 years now of trying to figure out, well, it'll be 19. Going on 19 years now of trying to figure out exactly what I saw. And I literally think about it every single day. As weird as it is, and as much as I wish I didn't, it's one of those things that's just stuck with you.
A lot of times I think to myself and I wish, I would love to be like everybody else that's just blissfully ignorant of all this stuff. It's like, I don't want to know that these things are out there. I don't want to know that these things exist.
And I've said the same
I,
thing, but had I just kept driving and never went back, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. I wouldn't be doing this show. And people say things happen for a reason. And maybe this is the whole point of what I was supposed to be doing in the first place, was doing the show to give people the opportunity like you to talk.
and I do appreciate that. I certainly do. And the only reason why I bring this up, I mean, the first time I ever admitted this wasn't that long ago. And I was very nervous about admitting the whole little white chimp because, there's a stigma that comes with that. People think you're just ignorant, that you're dumb, that you got to screw loose or something. It's like, I'm actually pretty stable. Within my line of work, I've run multi-million dollar jobs. I'm pretty sure I'm pretty stable and I still don't know how to explain what I've seen. It's not something that I want to go talking about because I don't want to be labeled the freak that believes in nonsense. Now that I'm older, now I'm almost 50, I'm 49. Now I don't care. I don't care what you think of me or what you believe. So maybe that's why I'm starting to talk about it nowadays, but it is what it is. I saw what I saw. I don't care what you tell me. I don't care what you want to brand it and call it. This is what I saw. I'm not telling you what I've seen or what I think it. I'm simply telling you this is what I saw. This is what I've experienced. And then when you throw the rest of my life into it, then shoot, this is just a drop in the bucket. I've heard you talking before about how people that have one certain experience seem to have tons of other experiences with the rest of the stuff. I mean, I got a boatload of paranormal experiences that I can talk to you about. I've seen UFOs. I've seen a lot more things that I'm sure people wouldn't want to see.
If you would like to share some of those, I'd definitely love to hear about them.
I'll tell you one thing. One of the creepiest things, and this is what I relate back to the Bigfoot thing when my hair stood up. Um, After the deployment, long story short, we were getting together in Fort Bragg, at one of my sister's houses for just the holidays. Everybody hated her house, and there's tons I could go into to her house, but I'll tell you this one story. My daughter was already born; she was only a few months old, and she gave us the upstairs master bedroom so we could have a bathroom. 'Cause when you have a baby, you need a lot more, obviously. And what I did, because we didn't bring the night light, is I left the bathroom light on as a night light. I wake up somewhere probably 2:30, 3 in the morning, somewhere in there, to change my daughter and feed her. I know I gotta change her diaper out. My sister had given us like this little folding cot. We filled it tons of pillows and everything so she wouldn't roll off. So I'm over there. I get over there, I'm changing her diaper, and my back's to the bathroom. And as I'm doing this, a shadow comes over the bathroom, and then immediately my hair just stands up again. There was something blocking the light that was coming from the bathroom. As I'm changing my daughter, my back's to the bathroom. I've been in the military. I have the training. I don't panic now. I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to finish what I'm doing, and as soon as I'm done, I'm going to turn around and face whatever's behind me. I finish the diaper. I ball the other one up to make sure she doesn't get into it. And as soon as I lift up to turn around, it disappears. If it had been a human being, if it had been one of my family members playing a prank on me or anything else, because even though the door was locked, the bedroom door, I would have seen a foot, an arm, something. I would have seen something going back into the bathroom. I walk into the bathroom, obviously, there's nothing there. I put my daughter in between her mom and me. I didn't wake her mom up. I put her in between me and I just lay there, wait the rest of the night looking at the bathroom. Again, I can't tell you what that was. I don't know what that was. All I can tell you is as soon as that shadow came, my hair just stood up, and I I just felt it. I felt it in my body. And that was the feeling that you would get in that house. I don't know what that was.
Some houses just have a lot of weird energy to them. And I don't know if that's what draws things in or if it's the things itself that gives it that energy. But sometimes I just feel like there's certain places, maybe it's the land, who knows, but there's just something about it that's just a little off. And I've never like trying to think of how to word this correctly, but I've never understood how some people can have experiences in certain places and then the other people that have been there don't have those experiences. Has your sister ever talked about stuff going on too?
What she told me about that house, because they lived there, obviously, she eventually, once they sold that house, they finally moved and got stationed up here in Maryland too. What she told me about that house is, I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to acknowledge it. That's what she told me. But at that point, they didn't live upstairs. It was a two-story house, two-story home. Her husband and her had made one of the bedrooms downstairs their master bedroom, and my nephew's room was one of the other rooms downstairs. They refused to go upstairs.
The refusing to acknowledge is actually common. We do that here in my own house. But no, I completely get that aspect to it. Is you don't want to give something the energy or the attention that it could be seeking. But someone also recently told me that by ignoring it, you're showing it that you're afraid of it too.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if ignoring it is also the correct way to go about it either.
I truthfully, when we started talking before the interview, I don't know how far you want to go into this stuff, but I mean, I I have tons of stuff. I just don't know what your time looks like, and
Well, what I can,
or
I'm as good for as long as you want to talk, but we've been going on for a little over an hour. So if you think this would be better off as its own separate episode, we can schedule another time and just talk about all the paranormal aspects of what you've experienced. That way it's kind of its own little thing.
sure, that can certainly work because I can tell you for for a fact I can keep going for hours on this with the paranormal stuff.
We will definitely get something set up here in the next few weeks. I have some openings here coming up soon, and I will get you added to that. We can talk about that here off air. But
Okay.
before we wrap it up, is there anything else you would like to say for anyone listening, especially if they're in your area and they've seen something similar?
The only thing I want to tell people is we don't know what we're seeing necessarily, and if you did see something straight up, it's you know what, open up about it because when you just close up and just refuse to talk about it, it's just harder on you. Once you get past that point of people thinking that you're crazy, just open up and let it out because there's enough people in this world now that have experienced similar things, and you don't have to keep it bottled in. It's just better if you just let it out and talk to people that have been in your situation. That's all I would have to say.
That is the one thing I do recommend to anyone listening. If you've ever had an experience, I'm not even just saying it to come talk to me. Like, find someone that you can talk to about it, because having a lot of weird, unexplainable questions and everything can eat away at you. Just speaking from personal experiences here, not being able to talk about stuff for so long can cause people to really question a lot more than anything, your own sanity half the time, wonder if you're crazy for that long. So I understand. And again, I appreciate you coming on here and talking with me tonight.
Thank you, Brandon. It's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you for taking the time.
Not a problem. If you would like to be a guest on Tinfoil Tales, remember to send an email to tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com, or you can also go to tinfoiltales.com and go to the contact section. Just make sure to reach out and get a hold of me, and we will get something scheduled for a future episode. You can also find Tinfoil Tales on Facebook and Instagram. Just look for Tinfoil Tales Podcast. You can reach out to me that way too. Remember to share the show around. Word of mouth is the best way to help the show grow. And just remember, truth comes at cost. Are you willing to pay the price?